Good evening. Let me make sure everything is running properly real quick and we'll get this show on the road. All right, looks good to me. Havoc, you got an open mic there, buddy. I can mute you. Alrighty. Let's see here. Let's just go ahead and get to things. All right. I hope everyone's had a good, nice weekend. Hopefully the weather wasn't bad on y'all's end because I know there was some bad stuff rolling through this weekend. But hope everyone's doing good, everyone's being safe, everyone's happy and healthy, and just living their life. But yeah, what an exciting week we just had. Let's see. Let's just go ahead and go over to here. Yeah, a pretty wild ride last week, no doubt about that. First things first, I do want to bring up right now we do have a little bit of a gap down on futures here. So we are getting a nice little tug to the downside. And this is most definitely caused by our oil futures here. As you can see in the top left screen, that we do have the crude oil futures here. See that we closed here around the 75, 76 mark on Friday, only to gap up to about this 80 level here. 82 is a big spot on the crude oil. We'll talk about that once we get into the notes. But yeah, a big gap up on crude oil with the OPEC plus cuts. OPEC is just pretty much think of it as the FOMC of the oil guys. So a lot of oil cuts that occurred right before open. I know the White House said we don't recommend it, but here they are. Will we see an impact? Maybe. This is a $5 gap up on the price per barrel here on crude oil, so we'll have to see. Maybe they'll release some more reserves and keep prices a little bit stable here. So, yeah, crude oil. Maybe we'll see. We definitely want to keep our eyes on any kind of rotation here. But this 82 mark, 82.60 is definitely going to be a pretty important spot here for crude oil. But yeah, welcome to the Sunday Night Prep. For joining us on social media. I appreciate you. If you have any questions, feel free to type them out, or if you have any ticker requests, I'll be more than happy to dig in and get to them as we move along. But yeah, exciting week that we had last week, where pretty much the market bulls really took over. We had the PCE come in on Friday, and that came in under. It was like 0.1% under, I believe, which is definitely good. One of the key factors that we've been paying attention to is, how the Fed funds react to that key data point, and, how the Fed funds future rate processes that data, and how the Fed might start to pivot in the future. The market does seem to believe that the Fed is going to pivot sometime in September, like in Q3. We'll see. We know that the Fed and Powell has said repeatedly that they are not going to stop or not decrease rates this year, but it won't be until sometime 2024 that they'll cut rates. The Fed funds is kind of saying, no, we don't believe you, nanny nanny boo boo kind of thing. So we'll see. Usually, what the Fed likes to do is they like to keep going until something breaks. Now, I know we did see something break, I guess you could say, as far as the regional banks, which, it's still not quite over. Uh, we still have to deal with, there's a lot of outflows that are occurring in these regional banks, and they are flowing into the bigger banks. So if anything, we want to pay attention to, how these bigger banks are, doing. So that makes me want to focus in on the XLF as opposed to the KRE. And as well, I'm not going to be focusing as much still into the small caps and the IWM. If you look here on the SPY, you can see that we've had a nice shift, so to speak, here. First thing I want to bring to your attention here is, when we started this downturn, you can see where the 21 EMA crossed below the 50 simple EMA, 50 simple. When we had that, we had a nice little flush here, and we had, any kind of pops back to the 50. We could never get over it. We flushed again. We came back up to the 50. This is the weekly chart, by the way. We couldn't get past it, and we still flushed some more. Now that has, kind of shown itself like, hey, this weekly 50 is kind of a big deal. But one thing that I do want to point out is look what we've got now since then. Since then we've now got a new weekly 21 EMA crossing above the weekly 50. And that doesn't happen by coincidence or anything like that. This is something that we do kind of want to pay attention to, especially if you are a moving average kind of guy. So yeah, we haven't had that since then. And like I said, once we crossed below here, we had like a, what was it, like a 900-point flush on the SPX ES. So this is a pretty important deal. Not to mention here we have our weekly squeeze, and you can see that we definitely have this new uptick. Let me zoom in on this real quick so you can see it. On the weekly squeeze, you can see how it was kind of shifting gears here, and we had this month ago where the bank started to have some big problems. We had this nice aggressive downward candle here, and it looked like this weekly squeeze was going to start to fire short. And the market continues to be pretty darn resilient, and since then we have not only recovered that entire move, but we've also closed well above it. So the market seems to have brushed that off and pushed on ahead. So that just kind of goes to show you the absolute resiliency of the market bulls that are within this market. So not only do we have this weekly crossover of the 21 and the 50, we also have this weekly squeeze that is now seeing an uptick here as well. As far as my oscillator goes, you can still see it's pretty much neutral. The yellow is below the red, so this is just, it's neutral just because the positioning is incorrect. But then when I look down here at my thrust signals, you can see that I have a weekly buy. So everything is telling me that this is aligned for things to continue to progress forward. So I am looking forward to that. And if you can see here on the SPY that there's not many lines here to really work with. We've pretty much taken care of everything as far as resistance wise. Now we still have maybe some areas to kind of deal with, especially at the 413, 415 zone. But we are above the main moving averages now here on the daily. You're above the daily 50, you're above the 21, you're above the year-to-date VWAP, you're above the daily 200. The daily 200, think of it as like your hemisphere. If you're above it, you're bullish. If you're below it, you're bearish. So everything is pretty much aligned, starting to get in better alignment here as well. You can see that the moving averages are starting to get a nice little curl upward to them. Even the daily 200 has gotten a little shift to it. So yeah, there's not much, if you were to think of it, if you were below this and you're trying to come up, you would have to fight with the daily 200, bonk your head over it and move down and so forth. But now you can see here that there's really not that much. You get a lot of space between where we are at now and where we tend to go. That's a terrible squiggle line. I apologize. My artsy self showing there. So yeah, as far as SPY goes, yeah, looking pretty good. Let's see here. Let me go through things here, make sure I didn't miss anything on the SPY. One thing to note too here, let me shift over to a smaller time frame, is the 4-hour. This was the big thing that I was watching last week. We had this nice little 4-hour squeeze here. If I can bring that down to a smaller thing there. So you can see here on the 4-hour squeeze, this was the big player that I was really working with last week. This started to shift gears while we were hanging out right here, and this thing started to just pop off. And now we got that 4 hour squeeze firing long. We have thrust momentum pointing to the upside. This is neutral, so everything still looks pretty darn juicy. Maybe we can get a few more upside ticks here on the 4 hour. We all know that the squeeze, once it triggers long or short, we know that it can last really between 8 to 12 candles. So yeah, still got some wiggle room here on the SPY on the 4 hour. If we move on over to the NASDAQ, we know that the NASDAQ is pretty much king of the castle right now. Everything is in bullish alignment here as far as the NASDAQ goes. Most of the heavy weighted stocks in the NASDAQ are in uptrends. Even the very small percentage that is not, they still have that bullish momentum to them anyway. So, if we take a look at everything, you can see here, even is more picture perfect, so to speak. You get the moving averages are got a nice little upside curl of them. The daily 200, the daily 50, the daily 21. Momentum looks good. The oscillator is still pretty good, and we have bullish thrust here. Even on the squeeze here on the weekly, well, we don't have a squeeze, but everything is correctly positioned as far as the NASDAQ goes. And this goes to tell me, as far as everything else within the market, that if we do get a dip, a pullback, then that is a buyable dip. So what I'm led to believe with everything that I've been looking at is that this uptrend is definitely believable. That's for sure. If we take a look at the junk bonds, HYG, for the longest time we've been talking about this. The HYG getting above 75 is a pretty crucial point. This is your junk bonds, and our key spot was 75, and look, we are here now, and we have also an uptick in the daily squeeze. We got above our 75 level, and we actually closed above it. And this also tells me that if corporate credit is improving, then this push forward on the main indices can definitely be believed. So that's why I'm looking at any kind of dip that we do get. We can absolutely buy the dip, especially within tech names. So you can see here, nice close above 75. You get an uptick on the squeeze. We got some good thrust momentum here. So it's just a matter of, let's keep this thing going, and if we can maintain above that 75 mark. Moving on to the IWM, the small caps, the biggest problem with the small caps is the weighting of your regional banks with the KRE. Those outflows pretty much weigh on me. We're seeing large outflows of going away from the KRE, from the regional banks into the large banks. So I don't really have much enthusiasm here for the IWM. You can kind of see here on the weekly chart that we're still very much so in a range bound market, and you can see that it's still very uneasy. Even here, the oscillator is not correct, and you can see that we still have some bearish signals on the thrust, and the weekly squeeze is still pre-squeezing, and we don't have any good indications of which way this thing wants to go. On the daily, you can see that you got a nice little Darvis box here between 180 and 170. You can see that we did have this cute little uh, bear trap down here at 170, and when this thing flushed below 170, I was like, "Yep, that's borderline GG." But they were able to bounce this thing. They held it, and look, we gapped down here towards like really 168, and the bulls came in and pushed this thing on higher. But as it sits, there's nothing really to go off of as far as the small caps goes. So I'm not too ecstatic, as far as the IWM goes. Sure, it can still be a great day trade, but if you're looking to get long or swing long here, it's going to be messy. It's going to be a little bit of a headache until certain conditions do uh, improve. And the main improvement there is going to mainly be with the KRE and seeing some inflows come back into the small cap regional banks. So as far as the IWM goes, yeah, nothing, just not nothing to be crazy about as far as where it is with price and what we're looking at as far as the indicators. As far as the Dow goes, sure, you had a nice little break back into the prior range. You got back above 325. It still has a long ways to go, especially if it wants to match, uh, where things are compared to the SPY and the Qs. Now, she's definitely improved in the fact that she is back above the daily 200, and we still have some early thrust signals that I am paying attention to. But for the most part, uh, unless we see some sort of rotation out of tech and into some of these Dow components, you're still pretty much in a sit and wait period. You do have a squeeze on the weekly, which has been going on for literally over a month now, and it still has some ways to improve. You can still see that volume's just kind of been dried up. Nothing too spectacular going on. The only thing that we can really watch here is if we do notice any of that rotation going on. So for the most part, if I were to rank them, it'd be the Qs, followed by the SPY, and then the Dow and the IWM would definitely be your last man standing. Let's see if we take a look at the 30-year bond. Let's see. I know it's not the most exciting thing to look at, but 30-year it continues to hold up, and this has mainly been our flight to safety look since the SVB collapse. The levels reflect that the long bonds is kind of aware that the Fed fund futures aren't so hawkish, and that there is that possibility of a rate cut. So that's what we're watching with the 30 the 30-year bond, and this will also help keep the yield uh, lower and the TLT higher if you want to use the TLT, which I know we don't talk about the TLT too often. I mainly focus in on the actual bonds here, but the TLT is in this interesting little hold pattern to see what happens if we do kind of come over here and look at the Fed fund futures tool. You can see that right now our current rate is 475 to 500 basis points. Uh, this is looking out towards May, and you can ask yourself, well, what does this tell us? Now, this chart is not a static image. This, or the data itself isn't static. It's very dynamic. It changes pretty much day to day, and especially as more and more data comes out. Currently we're at 475, 500. It is reflecting a possibility of either a hold. So there's like a pretty much a 50% chance here of a hold, or a 53% chance, 47, 53% chance that there's going to be another quarter rate hike. And it's pretty much reflecting the same thing in June. So there seems to be a toss up right now, uh, as far as is the Fed going to take this higher, or if they're going to start their holding period. And we just kind of need to play it by ear from here on. They might try to squeeze out at least one more rate hike before cutting, whether that's in late Q3 or 2024, like the Fed has been saying. So, like I said, this past week we had PCE, which is the preferred measure of inflation. Uh, you know, they're looking at it, so we should look at it as well. And it pretty much just gives us a good insight as to what consumer spending is looking like. Let's move on over to the VIX futures. I use the /VX if you're on TOS. It's pretty much a popular way to measure not just volatility, but the overall market stress. Higher reading is bad for stocks, lower reading is good for stocks. And right now it's just kind of settled in It's not really doing a heck of a whole lot. It's currently trading at about 21. Now, I do believe we did get a little bit of a gap up on it just because of the crude oil situation. Yeah, we're currently trading at 21. It's kind of coming down, as you can see, but for the most part, it's just kind of in this hold pattern. So that just kind of tells me that it's another tool that we look at that just kind of suggests that yeah, this rally is most certainly believable. And if you're looking at especially tech names that we can look at buying the dip, but as long as it does maintain, it definitely suggests that there is upside to the market. Speaking of that, let's look at crude oil. This is the one thing that I definitely wanted to talk about here. If we load, there we go. 82.64. You can see that we've been kind of stuck. Lord, way too big. You can kind of see here that we've just been kind of stuck here for quite some time. We gapped up to it. Now, if you can get a decent candle close here above 82.64, then that could be potentially the start of something new here that we definitely have to keep our eyes on, of course. But we'll see. It's kind of gapped up right smack into resistance, and we know when things gap up smack into resistance, these things tend to just kind of fold back over. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on this one, of course. Uh, we'll see. It just has to prove itself if I want to be excited about it. But there are definitely some interesting crude oil names out there, especially if you want a name that we want to look at. MPC looks absolutely fantastic. Marathon Petroleum. This thing has just been on an absolutely big bull run for quite some time. It has not rolled over like some of these other crude oil names, Oxy, PSX. MPC continues to trend higher here, a series of higher highs and higher lows. You are in a daily squeeze. You are in a pre-squeeze on the weekly. The oscillator's correct. You still have good thrust. So I imagine this thing looks pretty darn good. If you got an all-time high break at about a 136.50, if you do get a new all-time high break, yeah, definitely looking for a push towards at least 150. So if you're looking for any kind of oil name, definitely give LPC a look, see if it fits. Another good one to kind of take a look at is VLO, Valero. You got a nice little, you're starting to enter a squeeze. You got bullish neutral here, but you have some early buy signals, but a mid-level weekly buy signal and a bullish alignment on the oscillator, as well as a squeeze on the weekly. So this thing looks pretty darn juicy, if you ask me. So MPC, VLO, these guys look absolutely fantastic. Let's see. Let's go over to copper. Copperfield. Let's see. Copper is essentially neutral. If anything, I'm not too excited here right just yet. Now, if it gets above 415, then yeah, this thing looks a little bit better. But as you can see, these moving averages are just kind of crisscrossing back and forth each other. They're just kind of playing dilly dally at the year to date VWAP. You don't have any compression here. The oscillator is neutral. And yeah, you do get some early buy signals here, but it's nothing worth actionable just yet. Maybe a little bit of this pre-squeeze on the weekly could be something worthwhile, but as until it breaks above our level 415, then nothing to really write home about just yet. All right, let's see here. Let's move on over to gold futures, and then we'll take a look at a few others, and we'll kind of be on our merry way. Take a few names. Gold, it continues to keep on with its bullish track, and since its gain, it's really been on a bullish run since mid March. Everything seems to be correctly positioned. Bullish momentum, bullish structure. She's currently in an uptrend. Any dip can be bought. Y'all know I do have a position here in gold using GLD. But yeah, everything seems to be correct and suggests that any dip could and should be bought. So I like this breakout above 181.75. Once we get above 186, this thing can definitely start to party a little bit more, especially towards 190, 195. So I definitely like the look of this. Momentum is getting a little shifty on the squeeze, so we might start to enter a squeeze here soon. But as far as that goes, I'll be looking for this thing to continue to push higher. Let's take a look at the dollar real quick. Yeah, G Unit, we'll take a look at Monster. Yeah, Monster is a monster, dude. Dollar, it's pretty much in a bearish trend here. You can see that the oscillator is in a neutral position, but we still got some negative bear signs here. Yeah, the dollar continues to be a little weak. We'll see if we find support yet again at this 101 level. So support back down 101, resistance. You got plenty of overhead resistance for sure. You're below the main moving averages. Not much really to say here. So maybe you're forming a little bit of a Darvis box between 103.50 and 101. Not much to talk about there. So yeah, let's kind of jump into a few things. As far as the main focus goes, uh, strength gets stronger and weak gets weaker. If that's the way you want to put it. We are starting to enter earnings season. This week is actually kind of late. Excuse me, is kind of light as far as the earnings report goes. But there are some pretty heavy expectations, mainly because of strong jobs numbers, which we get some new job number reports this week. With the quarter end, XLK, XLC, and the XLY were our big players of the first quarter, and they are the beneficiary of this strength. Whereas the regional banks, the financials, definitely struggled. Healthcare has also been weak. XLP did get a little bit of a surge, mainly from Procter and Gamble, Pepsi, Coke. But this does put that sector on watch, the XLP, due to volatility. But I am going to be being on the lookout for any kind of sector rotation and looking into buying any pullbacks from the major players. So there's definitely a lot of interesting dynamics going into the start of this new month, this new quarter. If we do get XLK and communications weakness, then I'm going to be looking at the financials, the energy, and the builders, and vice versa. So, we do have a big week ahead of us as far as the economic calendar goes. We got ISM manufacturing PMI tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tuesday, we have the JOLTS job openings. Wednesday, we have the ADP non-farm payrolls at 8:15. Thursday, we have the weekly unemployment claims. And then Friday, we have the unemployment rate and non-farm employment change. So we have plenty of economic data to go through, and that's not including any possible Fed speakers that we may have. So yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. Yeah, let's look at Monster. Monster, fantastic breakout. I've been watching this thing. It seems like for ages. You had this 2-to-1 split recently, and now you're finally getting maybe a few more participants now that it's a little bit cheaper. Yeah, booze. We'll take a look at Bitcoin. Uh, Now that you've gotten this 2-to-1 split, looks great. You had this all-time high breakout above 52.73. You had a fantastic close on Friday. My overall targets is between 55 and 56. Those are going to be my zone there, 55 through 56. If you went shares, great. If you took options, that's looking good too. Yeah, this breakout looks pretty darn good. You even had a squeeze here that's starting to shape up and fire bullish. The let's see here, you got the squeeze. You had dark blue shift to light blue. It's starting to fire long. The oscillator is in a bullish structure, and the thrust is as bullish can be. Sure, it's above the 80 line, which means it's overbought, but with this, overbought is technically a very good thing and can remain overbought and oversold for a long period of time. Case in point, if you want to look at Peton as this example, let's go over here to the two. Let's go 2 years. You can see here, look at this. You're below the 20 line here on my indicator is oversold. And look how big how long this has lasted from November to November. So an entire year of oversold conditions on Piton, and it hasn't been until lately that it's started to get a little bit more pep in the step, so to speak. But yeah, that just kind of goes to show you the dynamic of this indicator. Yeah, looks pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Uh, how did I get those price targets on Monster? Basically, I just used the swing. I guess you could have used either one, but this was my old drawing that I had. I just used a 3-point Fibonacci, and what I'm doing is I'm projecting price targets. So what you do is you grab your 3-point Fibonacci, 1, 2, 3, and you take the prior swing low and you double tap the high here. So if you want to use that one, you can use this one as well, and that would give you a 55 to 57 range, 55 and a half to 57 range. So whichever one you see fit. I just kept using this one because that was my old drawing there. So you can use this prior swing low if you want. In this case and point, we are projecting our price points. So if I'm not trying to do this number, if this kind of makes sense, I'm not, because this doesn't give you anything. This doesn't tell you anything. So if you're trying to do a what's it called? My brain just decided to go blank. It always goes blank. When you are doing a 3-point Fibonacci and you're in this tight sideways market, the best way to use it is to decipher where your possible targets are, as far as that goes. Projection, yeah. So projecting is when you're basically doing, if you take this high and subtract it from this low, it gets you this. So the difference gives you this target. That's essentially what you're doing. That's your price target, and you base it based on the range as your measured move. It's a measured move projection. But when you're in a sideways range like this and you're doing it from point A to point B to point C, you're just going to get a bunch of lines here. And sure, you can probably trade off of that, but for me, that's just not how I like things. But just because that's how I do it doesn't mean that that's not how you can do it as well. You don't have to, whatever works for you. But if you want to do price projections, that's how you get your measured move. You can kind of see here on the SPY. Let me go to the SPY real quick. You'll see that I have a projected move here highlighted at 424. And the way that I did that was, remove that. I took my 3-point, point 1, point B, point C, and that gives me my 424 target. So if we continue this upward move here, this upward swing, 424 is going to be my main target. Yeah, they just don't give you, like when you're in a sideways market, like fibs, to me personally, fibs don't really do much for me. There's other tools that I can use. So when we are in a sideways market, I look at other indicators. If you're in a Darvis box, I look at my squeeze, look at my oscillator, and I look for any kind of signal that I can get on my thrust. But I do like to use them as a projection or a measured move projection to know where my potential price target would be as far as the measured move goes. That's how I use them. Red Green, you want me to check in on Oxy? Oxy, yeah, we all know that Warren Buffett loves to buy up his Oxy. This thing is most likely going to gap up, especially with the crude oil news. But this thing is holding above 60. It hasn't gone anywhere in ages. I say ages, but it hasn't gone anywhere since, what was that, March of last year and August of last year. You've been stuck in this pretty tight range since then. Let me draw this here. So 74, 75, 77, and 52. Granted, it's a wide range, but now that Warren Buffett is involved, excuse me. Uh, now that Warren Buffett is involved, yeah, it hasn't gone much of anywhere. You're very sideways. You do have a squeeze. You're pretty neutral on the oscillator, but I don't really have any buy signals. In fact, on the weekly time frame, I have thrust signals to the downside with a squeeze. Now, I'm not one to fight against Buffett. I probably wouldn't touch it. I'm not really going to short it. But I also don't want to be long unless things improve. It gets above, at least gets above the daily 200. If we can get back above the equator and the main moving averages start to curl up a little bit more, then maybe if we take a look at the hourly, now the hourly does look a little bit better. It's not too exciting, but you do have the 21 over the 50. They're both kind of curling up. It's just a very interesting positioning. Now, I do believe that this should gap up with the crude oil news from earlier. When I look at Oxy, why would I? My main question is there anything better out there in comparison to Oxy? So if I take a look at Oxy, let's take a look at Philip. Philip, kind of same positioning. Better yet, you're above the 200. You're in a pre-squeeze. So that's a little bit better. But like I said, when we looked at earlier, MPC Marathon Petroleum, compare this chart to Oxy. I mean, what looks better, Oxy or MPC? We can probably even compare it if we want to. Let's see. Comparison. Add selected. Let's add Oxy. Hit apply. All right, so yeah, so you can see here, strong uptrend versus weak uptrend. Weak to sideways uptrend is just very messy compared to the two. So if anything, I'm going to be looking at Oxy. Let's clear that up. Excuse me, I'm going to be looking at MPC. Let's see, who's another one we can look at? CVX. CVX, same situation. We could pull up the entire XLE sector if we wanted to. Make sure. Let's see. ZOM. Let's take a look at ZOM. Even still, ZOM is probably a little bit better than Oxy. You're above the daily 200. This thing's probably going to gap up to about 115 tomorrow if crude oil continues to hold. But you do have the early signals of early buy here on the daily. You do have a weekly squeeze here that could be an interesting spot. ZOM might not be a bad spot to buy here if we do start to see that rotation out of tech into some of these defensives like XLE and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I'll be paying attention to ZOM. I'll definitely be paying attention to MPC. But if I were to put money on the table, it wouldn't be Oxy. Now, granted, you have the backing of Warren Buffett. He has 300 million shares, give or take. He owns like 23% of this company now. It's kind of insane. So yeah, we know it's not going in it. It does pay a good dividend. So, he's racking up on that dividend. So we'll see. They just paid an 18-cent dividend, which increase of the previous quarters. So a nice little dividend increase there on Oxy. Let's see. I hope that makes sense. Red, green. If you are looking for any kind of trade, I'd be curious to see where tomorrow's close puts us to see if this squeeze does shape up into something different. And if so, where. So I would at least need to close above 65 and then take this to at least 67, maybe higher. 74 is definitely your upper range. But I mean, I like MPC a little bit better. Here. Actually, a lot more better. Bank of America. Yeah. Now, like I said before, unless things improve as far as the banks go, uh, we need to see it. Now, that doesn't mean we can't play it, but if you're trying to take a look at this from a structural standpoint and a momentum perspective, no trigger, no trade. And, what do we have here? We're just kind of in the middle of this range here between 30 and 27. Even below, if we get below 26.30, there's this nasty gap to 24.30. If we fill that gap, man, that'd be nasty. You do have earnings coming up soon. There's going to be a lot of eyes on that. Of course, what day is that? The 18th is when BAC reports earnings. I don't have a squeeze, but we can see that the histogram is shifting. So, this was pretty bearish. Now we're kind of shifting more into, where sellers are just kind of losing steam. This is bearish. You have yellow over red and you're below the 50 line. So this is bearish. And then our thrust signals, you can see they're all bearish. So, and we're even in oversold territory. Any bounce, any rip that we can get, maybe to the daily 21, I'd be a little bit more inclined to short this further down. Main issue here with banks is that it does involve the invisible hand of the Fed. The Fed can at any point, add more into the system. They got the backdrop in place. If there's something fundamentally speaking that you do like about Bank of America, I'll leave that up to you. But as far as I'm seeing, you could possibly use this 26.30 as your stop. But once you start breaking below 26.30, this thing can flush even further. But you got a lot of overhead resistance. You got 29.30. You'll have 31.50, and then you got 33.50 with the daily 200. There's just a lot of possible headache that you can have. You even got this possible head and shoulder look here on the weekly, and you flushed. It just seems a little bit unstable for me, and it's a little bit of damaged goods from my perspective. But everything just kind of suggests that, for now at least, any rip higher is a possible short the rip unless the financials can get their stuff back in order. There is one bank that I am keeping my eye on, and that's Berkshire. Go figure. Berk B, to be exact. You do have this sideways action. You're in a little bit of this Starbucks box between 320 and really pretty much that daily 200, the 297, 300 zone. So a little pretty interesting spot here. You are starting to squeeze. You got a neutral oscillator, but on my signals, I have a mid-level early buy. So I'm definitely keeping my eye on Berkshire. I think that was pretty much the only bank that I had show up on my. Oh, sorry, Boost. Yeah, I did say I was going to take a look at Bitcoin. Sorry. Didn't mean to skip you there, buddy. JP Morgan, same situation here. You can kind of see it's coming up a little bit more to that daily 21. You do got to say they can pay out a dividend soon. But as far as everything else goes, you got that shift of momentum on the squeeze. You got neutral positioning here on the OS, and your thrust signals are still pretty bearish. I don't have an early buy here. Let's look at Goldman. Goldman is a little bit better here on Goldman. You did get back to the daily 21. I'd be curious to see what happens at this daily 200 next at 337. Let's see. Even a little bit better on the squeeze momentum. You're still neutral bear on the oscillator, and I don't have any buy thrusts. You would have to go into a smaller time frame if you want to take a look at these. So let's go back to Bank of America real quick and go to a 1 hour at least. Let's see. I don't have. Okay, so we do have a pre-squeeze on the hourly. There we go. That's what we want to look for. Hourly squeeze. Good deal. Now, this is incorrect, however. This is bearish positioning. We're below the 50, yellow below red, but we do have this interesting thrust here. So what I would look at is this to break above 29 to hit 30, 31, hit the hourly 200 and see what happens from there. But this is starting to look interesting. You do have that 21 crossing back over the 50. It is kind of flat. So ideally, you want to see these kind of start to curl up as far as the structure goes. And then you got the year to date VWAP right here as well. So if we can at least get above 29, you could see a push to 30, 31. So that's how I would play BAC, especially focusing in on those smaller time frames. It looks like we also are in a squeeze on the 4 hours. So we'll just check that out real quick. Yeah, if you're pre-squeezing on the 4 hour, maybe we get a little bit of this little inverse head and shoulder. That could be a fun play. Still same situation, crack 29, push up towards that level up there, the 30, 29, 50. Is that what I said on the hourly? Looks interesting from a smaller time frame. Definitely have that alert set at 29. So, John, there you go. Interesting. And then, of course, just keep an eye out on the XLF itself. See how it is holding up. Bitcoin. Sorry, Booze. Didn't mean to skip Bitcoin now. Yeah, Bitcoin. This is interesting. Bitcoin has had a pretty phenomenal move, especially with the entire banking system going through its craziness that we saw over the past few weeks. Bitcoin's really starting to stabilize. Now, I still think there's still some fundamental issues with Bitcoin, but that's just opinion rather than fact to what we're looking at in the charts. If I'm looking here on the charts, I can see that it's had a pretty spectacular move, especially once we got above 25.2. We pushed towards 27. We even tapped 29. So that's going to be your key level here. That's your box. Now, if you can get above 29, yeah, I would use 30 as your psychological battle. Once you get above 30, you're probably looking at this other range here, about 32, maybe even 33, and then you got another juicy zone here towards what was that, 35, 36, give or take. So you definitely got some interesting levels. I like how Bitcoin broke out above this 25.2, came back in towards the 21, almost kissed it, and then came back up. So I think this is setting up pretty interesting. You got neutral alignment, but you're getting these buy thrust signals that I like to pay attention to. As far as the squeeze goes, you got this nice curl to the upside to it. Momentum still pretty intact as far as that goes. The weekly, you got some early signals here as well, pushing higher. This is neutral. Even your momentum is still quite bullish as far as the squeeze goes. So break above 29. Yeah, look for that thing to push on up. Maybe even buy the dip. I think you could buy the dip here. Buy the dip. And what's a dip buy for me? A dip buy for me is a buy, the perfect buy. If you had a picture perfect buy, the dip would be the daily 21. The daily 21. Shaman, I can't check that one out. Sorry. Got a bunch of crypto questions. Let's see. What would be the chat there? You can either throw them into the stock chat. I don't know if do you have access to crypto chat? Do you have access to crypto chat? Let me see. I can't remember how we do it. I don't think you do. Let's see. Yeah, you can just, if you don't have access to the crypto chat, just pop them in stock chat, I guess. I don't think it would hurt none. Yeah. If you have any questions, just feel free to send them to me for sure. No doubt about that. My DMs are always open, bud. All right. So let's see. Any ticker requests you may have? I'm happy to take a look. If y'all have any, feel free to shout them out. Otherwise, I know we took a look at Monster. You're a monster. Which Monster is full on beast mode, ADI beast mode. When I release my notes to you guys, you're going to see a lot of scan results. I'm trying to give y'all more scans. Uh, so feel free. I guess if you're on social, you can screenshot this if you want. uh, let's see. I'm trying to give y'all more names that you could possibly want. It's got weekly squeeze, daily squeezes, squeezes with momentum, bullish alignment, you name it. Cruise, yes, we took shares. I took shares here on Cruise. Cirrus Logic, this is a semiconductor name, one that kind of flies under the radar. You don't really hear about this one too much. It's rather hush hush. Cirrus Logic. Look at this tight range. You got the squeeze. Where's my pin at? You got the squeeze, firing long. You got bullish positioning on the oscillator. You had a buy back here, but it still remains overbought, which means this is still in force. This thing looks beautiful. This thing looks great. I got my stops all the way down here at 100. Looking for this thing to keep on trucking on towards 116, 117, maybe even higher. So Cruise, yeah, I really like the look of this. I think it can continue to push on up, and I'm in it to win it here on Cruise or Crus. Let's see, what's another one that's looking pretty good here? Deckers Outdoors. Yeah, here you go. A little bit pricier, but it's okay. Trying to break out above 458. That's looking pretty juicy. BSX, I believe Professor and some of y'all have been in this one. This one looks fantastic. Elf Beauty. I mean, geez. DRI Garden. It's getting there. Slowly but surely, kind of grinding. Keeping an eye on that one. O'Reilly coming back into the game. Let's see, Perry Pals. I mean, consistency has nailed this one from the beginning. No complaints there. Oracle still looks fantastic. I mean, look at this breakout on Oracle. This is a 52-week high breakout on Oracle. It's not an all-time high breakout, but look how much room. Hey, look, yeah, I even got this nice little fake out here. Lined up Oracle above 90, pushing back up towards 96. I mean, geez. MPC, we've talked about that one. Ulta, yeah, Ulta and ELF. I don't know what's up with these beauty names, but man, these things are on a tear. Ulta, you broke above 537.50. I mean, this thing can keep going. If we want to draw our targets here, I'm just going to use the swing low here, and then I'll put it right. If it'll give it to me, there it goes. 563 for Ulta as a target. Mondelez. There you go. BLDR still looks great. I mean, this thing had this crazy fake out, head fake, pushed down to the year-to-date VWAP, bounced perfectly off the year-to-date VWAP, held structure, 21, 50, 200, still curling up. This thing's looking to see if it can hold that. Let's see. WWE, Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment. I think they had news last night or tonight. Cody, yeah, 52-week highs. This thing is beast mode. We used to joke about this name like a while back. It's not all-time highs, but it's 52-week highs. But we used to joke and play that. Shaman actually was pretty good at playing this name when we first started the Discord, I believe. And yeah, this was kind of fun to trade. But man, this thing has been on a rip since it hit that six level support. Just pretty wild. All right, what am I watching tomorrow? Let's see. I'm watching Tesla. Tesla released their released their deliveries. They beat on their Q1 deliveries. They do have earnings April 19th. I'm hoping for not such a big gap up on Tesla. We'll probably, Tesla likes to be Tesla. So the way things closed Friday, 207 was the resistance. Overhead is going to be at 217. I imagine 220 will be a psychological number there, but 217.65, that's where the daily 200 is. I want to see where Tesla opens up and see if we can get into some shenanigans there. But yeah, they did beat on Q1 deliveries. We had a fantastic move on Friday. Looking for some follow through there. Let's see if we take a look at. I'm also going to be looking at MPC. Meta looks pretty darn juicy for continuation. There's not much between here and 220. So looking at 220 to push on ahead. This thing looks pretty good. Let's see. SE could be a possibility tomorrow, maybe. We'll see. Hit 87.50 and kind of brought it back down. Looking for a move towards 90. Let's see. AVGO. Broadcom looks fantastic. I'm also going to be keeping my eye on semiconductors like NVIDIA. Room to 282. Looks great. Let's see here. Tesla, NVIDIA. You mentioned Ulta. Ulta is going to be one tomorrow. LPC, Valero for my energy. Pepsi could be interesting if we do continue to see strength in the XLP names. Coke last week got back above 60. It's an interesting spot if you're looking for a not so expensive name, I guess. Interesting move. Could be. Burt B is going to be on radar all week. I like AbbVie. If we do see some healthcare strength, I like it above 159.20. You got plenty of room towards about 162. Definitely like the look of that. You can see that where all my levels have just been kind of had this nice move up, revisited, broke through. See if we can't get a follow through move there on AbbVie. Amazon, of course, is going to be on there. See if we can't get a push towards that 107.50, the daily 200. Starbucks had a pretty interesting week. Netflix, Oracle, PayPal. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. There's not a lack of goodies, to say the least. If we take a look at AMD, AMD is kind of in the middle. It's had a little bit of a pullback, which is good to see, but it is holding pretty nicely. It is bullish, but you can see here on the squeeze where the dark blue is still kind of fading here. So bullish pressure is kind of subsiding a little bit. We ideally want to see this uptick back up, but we'll see. But this is neutral bull. That looks good. If we do get a move on the thrust, I'll be looking for this thing to give me a new signal here. So as far as everything goes, AMD looks good. What was another one? TSM, I believe, is in a squeeze. Yeah, TSM squeezing a little bit. Needs to get above 97.50, but not too bad. NXPI, interesting spot here for that semiconductor. QCOM, I haven't looked at QCOM in a minute. Qualcomm above 128.50. You got some wiggle room towards 130. Let's see, BABA. Big move last week. I think it still looks pretty darn good. And who else? Microchip. There's another one that looks pretty darn juicy. You need to clear this level here. You can see all these wicks. 84. Once you get above 84, 86. Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft was, man, this thing is beastly. Microsoft is absolutely incredible. You have this nice flag pattern on the weekly, even on the monthly, looks really good. Any dip is a buyable dip here on Microsoft. You have bullish alignment on the oscillator. You got nothing but buy signals on the thrust. You're not in a squeeze, so this thing's just rocking and rolling. Ideally, I would like to get a pullback. It is extended in terms of prices you got this nice little air pocket between price and moving averages. But that's, besides the point. Things can continue. No doubt about that. But now that we've gotten this big move here, I mean, above 290, look for 294. I mean, this thing looks insane. I mean, Microsoft, if you got in down here, I mean, more power to you. I mean, this thing's been absolutely on a roar. Don't forget your AI names. AI. I mean, my goodness, what was another one? RLX, I think is another one. RLX Technology. This is a penny name, but shoot, get above 3. I mean, this thing looks good. I know I don't put out penny names hardly ever, but I mean, this thing grabbed my attention. I know there's a few more out there for sure. Let's see here. I'm make sure. IoT. IoT. Yeah, this has had a fantastic move. Um, yeah, just absolutely crazy. Any AI name that you can find, pay attention to it. Definitely pay attention to it. All right. Any other questions? Any ticker requests? I don't think TNT is in here. I tell them that tattoo looks dope. It looks lit. All right. Sweet. Well, I'll get these notes posted for y'all. I appreciate y'all coming out and hanging out with me this evening. I know it kind of runs a little late. But yeah, I'll get my notes posted for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you're on social media, give us a look at stockdads.com. If you have any questions, if you're on social media, you can email me at fuzz@stockdads.com. Or you can leave a comment. That's always good too. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. I'll get you my notes and my watch list for tomorrow. And I will see you guys bright and early. Thank you so much. Take care. Looking forward to the week ahead. Peace out, guys.